What is up, fellow nerds, and welcome back to the Dapper Snapper Gaming channel, and welcome to the beginning of a new series, at least for a limited time. I have joined a Pokemon Draft League, and I want to kind of talk about what that is, what I'm doing in all of this, and just kind of go through what we are going to be doing here for the next 8 weeks, at least here on the channel. So if you are excited for some new content, make sure to leave a like on the video and subscribe if you haven't already. I'm sure there are plenty of you who are new, so make sure that you subscribe so you don't miss any upcoming battles. And of course, those of you who are returning and maybe don't know what's going on, you should subscribe as well so that you can be here to find out. I'm of course hoping to reach 5,000 subs by the end of this year, and with your help, we can probably get there. And of course, another great way to help out would be to share the video with all of your friends who enjoy Pokemon content, because that will be really helpful in these upcoming weeks. So I joined the draft league called the SSBA. This is a return season. It has not been a thing for a really long time, but it was getting started back up, and I thought, I've been wanting to get back into doing a little bit of Pokemon content here and there. I don't want to necessarily give up anything about my D&D content, but adding on to this would be just great, and this will allow me to kind of sink back into my old school way of playing Pokemon. So this gives me a really cool out for this. I've not played Draft League since it's probably been like 6-7 years, I guess. It's been a while. It's been a while. But I'm also up against some really experienced players that are playing in several leagues, so I'm a little terrified, but it's all good. It's all good. So I have put the links in the description for every other coach in this league. Make sure to check all of them out before you leave this video behind, because they are all really awesome people. So what is a draft league? What even is this? What am I talking about here? So a draft league is where a group of players called coaches draft Pokemon similar to fantasy football. The draft order is determined randomly, and then it follows a snake draft format, meaning we go from top to bottom, and then once it reaches the bottom, that coach picks again, and then we head back up to the top. This repeats until everyone has the team that they want. Each Pokemon is exclusive and cannot be taken more than once, and now there is an exclusion for certain types of Pokemon that have differing forms, or some Pokemon that have different typings, move pools, stats, while still maintaining the same name. But by and large, it's going to be one of any given Pokemon across all the teams. Each Pokemon has been assigned a cost based on its competitive viability, and in this league that ranges from 1 point to 16 points. Each coach has 120 points total that they can use to draft a team of between 9 and 12 Pokemon. We did ban some Pokemon from this, such as box legendaries, as well as some others like Fluttermane and Magearna, but we did leave in certain threats like Spectrier, both are Shifu forms, Chien-Pao, Chi-Yu, Landorus Incarnate, and Iron Bundle. We also banned the move Last Respect, but we did keep around Shed-Tail and Revival Blessing, even though those are pretty popular bans for other draft leagues. As far as terastallization goes, the rule was pretty simple for this league. If the Pokemon cost 13 points or less, then it could terastallize. We are using a free Terra format for this draft, so that means that whatever you choose as your one Terra captain, it can actually terastallize into any type that it wants to, but that is the only Pokemon that you can terastallize during the course of any battle. So when it came to draft, I was placed number 6 out of 14, almost dead center. This makes it really difficult for me to draft all of the Pokemon that I want, because there are a lot of picks between each of mine. And so if I was in a wheel position, I could get 2 Pokemon relatively quickly, whereas with this, I've got to wait until a bunch of Pokemon leave before I get to choose again. That did make it a little bit difficult, and I did get sniped quite a few times. Let's talk about all of that here. So by the time it came around for my first pick, I'm 6th in the draft, which is not terrible for the very first round, but then after that, it's just kind of right? Because I'm having to wait quite a while between each of my picks. So my first pick, I was looking at what was left on the field. Some typical stuff that normally leaves early was already gone. Things like Iron Valiant, Urshifu Single Strike, Chien-Pao, all that stuff. That was already gone. That was expected. So I didn't really expect to get anything like that. Instead, I had my sights on something different. Now, my wife told me that my goal in this draft was to draft a certain large bear that was coming in from Legends Arceus, named Ursaluna. And I thought, because I'm stupid, that I'd be able to snag that on round 2. And so I picked a mon that I thought would complement Ursaluna, and then I would catch it on the way back up. So for my first round pick, I drafted Dragapult. Now, Dragapult to me is one of the kings of draft, at least from everything that I saw in Sword and Shield. I played a little bit of competitive in Sword and Shield, but I've always been more of a Wi-Fi person. And with the 20-minute timer, it really held that mon back from me being able to experiment with it, I guess. But so, yeah, it can do everything. It's blazing fast. It hits pretty hard, both on the physical and special side, and has move pools to boot for both. It can set screens. It can do certain statuses like Will-O-Wisp, Thunder Wave. It can even do Curse, which is becoming a thing nowadays to beat some of your bulkier mons. So it's really, really good. And it also comes with U-Turn for momentum, which you're going to find is a very common theme for my team. I have a lot of momentum for what I was doing. So I felt pretty good with that pick. I really liked it. And then the bear got sniped. Round 1, Ursaluna went to somebody else, and I realized very quickly that I do not quite have a handle on what is going to go quickly and what is not. And so I quickly began to shift my plan. And so I thought, you know, here's what I can do. I can go with something else that's really, really strong, a good setup sweeper, and that way it can be behind screens, maybe, that kind of thing. And so I was gunning for Espathra for round 2. Then that also got sniped. And so I was just kind of scrambling to see what it is that I could use in this next slot. When it came back to me, I finally decided on a mon that I thought really complemented Dragapult really, really well. And that happened to be Sneasler. Now, Sneasler was only 12 points in this draft, which was insanely low. This was very much a budget pick as far as I'm concerned. And this thing is worth way more than 12 points in any capacity. Number one, I needed something that dealt with fairies, and this deals with fairies just fine, because obviously Dragapult does not appreciate dealing with those fairies. It also helps with steals if I'm not carrying a fire move that week on Dragapult. It's another U-turner, but mostly this thing comes with an insane move called Dire Claw. And Dire Claw has a 50% chance to poison, paralyze, or put the opponent to sleep. That is insane. That is absolutely insane. Plus it gets Poison Touch, which gives it an additional 30% chance to poison the opponent if it makes contact with them. So yeah, it's insane. It also gets Unburdened, so if it loses its item, it just gets even faster. It's also blazing fast, and it hits really hard. So for all of those reasons, I thought that pairing those two together was really, really good. This also gave me a grounded poison in order to absorb toxic spikes, and it can also set its own toxic spikes. So it gave me a lot of value, especially at 12 points. So that was really, really, really good. For my next pick, I decided that I needed to go ahead and pick up hazards, and I needed to pick up hazard removal, more importantly, pretty quickly. There are a lot of mons that lost defog, so Rapid Spin is kind of king nowadays. And so when it got back to me, I was very surprised to still see this next mon that was still available, and that is Iron Treads. Iron Treads is arguably the second best spinner in the game right now, minus Great Tusk. This thing is really good. It gave me a ground type and a steel type, so that starts my Fairy Dragon Steel Core, so that's really great. It gives me an immunity both to poison and to electric, so that's also really good. It is a stealth rocker, it is a spinner, it has Volt Switch for momentum once again. It's pretty fast, so it just comes with so much value here that really, really helps me out. Again, something that helps me with those fairies if I need help there. So for all of those reasons, Tusk is really, really, really helpful here. And maybe even some weeks I might end up running a Iron Defense plus Body Press kind of set. It can do that too as well, because it's pretty dang bulky as well. Really cool. So I'm really happy with my first 3 mods, right? And up until this point, or actually until a little bit past this point, a lot of us were under the impression that we had to draft all 12 Mons, and that's why we had so many points available to us. Well, we found out a few picks after this that wasn't the case, but I was now drafting under that assumption, so I was picking some Mons that were worth a little bit less points so that I could have a little bit more of a consistent draft in order to, maintain at least something decent, right? So my next pick, I wanted to go ahead and pick up something that was kind of a glue pick for me. I was gunning for Rotom Wash, and then that got taken before it could get to me. And so I ended up going back to the drawing board, but not that long, as I ended up just drafting its slightly worse brother, Rotom Heat. Now, they were both the same number of points in the draft, which I thought made Rotom Heat a little bit too expensive, but it's okay. I had the points to burn on it, and it gives me a fire type for my Fire Water Grass core. It gives me another Volt Switcher. It gives me a ground immunity, which I was weak to ground up until this point, so that gives me some help with that as well. And this is just a great Mon, right? It can status both with Thunder Wave and with Will-O-Wisp. It used to be able to defog, but it can't anymore, so that's unfortunate. But again, Volt Switch, it can just swap out whenever it wants to. And so that's also really, really helpful. So this was another really, really great pick, and I'm really happy with this. And then this next pick, I was also kind of surprised that it was still around, and that is just Slowking, regular Slowking. Galarian Slowking obviously was already taken, and I mean, that Mon is busted, but to me, that was kind of redundant with having Sneasler already, so I wanted regular Slowking here as well. It gives me a bulky water type, which is great, but even more importantly, it led into kind of the direction that my draft was going. At this point, or around this time, we were told, no, you can just do between 9 and 12 Pokemon. And so at this point, I'm like, okay, I've got some points to burn. I can just kind of go crazy with this. And so I decided to start setting up for my late game at this point with Slowking. Slowking, of course, gives me a really bulky water type. It gives me a psychic type, which I didn't have yet. So that can help against other fighting types, which could end up being a bit of an issue. And most of all, though, it gives me Trick Room, which you might think is weird given what I've picked so far. So far, my team has been pretty fast, right? Everything has been over base 100 except for Rotom. But I'm looking at doing a hybrid type of team here because I'm looking at some other Mons that are out there, and I want to be able to be versatile in what it is that I can do. But the thing is, Slowking doesn't have to set Trick Room in order to be good. It also gets Chilly Reception, which is another pivoting move, allowing us to gain momentum as well as setting Snow. So this thing's pretty awesome. I really like this. In this situation, I think it's a lot better than Slowbro, at least for my draft. And so I really just had to pick it up. For my next pick, I kind of made a mistake, at least as far as I'm concerned. I drafted Galarian Moltres. Again, I was kind of tunnel visioning on the setup screens and setup and sweep kind of thing, and I was just kind of only looking at that. And Galarian Moltres was great. I needed a dark type, and I needed something that was offensive, but ultimately it really didn't do a whole lot for my team, at least in my opinion. It gave me another rock weakness, and you'll find that my team was kind of weak to rock already. And so I ended up getting rid of this in the grace period right before the season started. So it didn't actually make it into the first week. So whatever. Plus, it was worth quite a few points. And so I got a refund on points back. And that way I was able to draft something else. I still wanted a dark type here, just a pure dark type. But I wanted something that was a little bit more useful for my team specifically. And maybe one that not anybody else was really interested in. I went with regular Zoroark. Now, of course, Hisuian Zoroark is superior to this one in most ways, but this one is unique, and that is a pure dark type. It's fast, of course, it's faster than Galarian Moltres. It still has access to Nasty Plot and some pretty cool stuff. It does get some fire coverage, so that can help against steals. But the big thing is the illusion that this thing has, and this can trick people into using psychic type moves when facing up against, you guessed it, Sneasler. Sneasler is, of course, going to be very weak to those psychic type moves, 4 times weak, actually, and so it's going to die to pretty much anything. If Zoroark ends up coming in looking like Sneasler, and you use a psychic type move, you're going to get nay-nayed with a Night Daze or a Flamethrower or whatever it is. And so I like the synergy with both of those together. And so I think that downgrading on the points, but grabbing something like this is going to be way more valuable for my team. And so I'm really happy with picking up this pick. And of course, it gave me some more points back so that I could choose some things later. Okay, so now is where my draft gets insane. Okay, my draft is already pretty good, right? I think that overall I've got a pretty decent draft. But at this point, I started looking here, and I don't think everybody realized that the rules had kind of shifted back to the minimum of 9. And so people were kind of being pretty conservative with their points. And so I'm like, you know what? I've got plenty of points left at this point. And there's a mon that I really want that for some reason hasn't been taken yet. I'm taking Hoopa Unbound. Hoopa Unbound is absolutely nuts. Now, this was kind of my signature Pokemon back in Oras when I was playing that a long time ago. That was pre-YouTube Dapper. But this thing was on almost all of my teams. Now, it is a little bit slow, unfortunately, but it hits like an absolute truck. It has a base 160 attack and 170 special attack. This thing is insane. Obviously, its biggest weakness is its low defense and its 4 times weakness to bug, which means U-turn. Every time it gets hit with a U-turn, it pretty much dies. So that is something to be concerned about, and I cannot terrastalize it because it is too powerful, which we'll get to terrastalization at the very end. But this thing is insane, and this thing gets Trick Room. It works great under Trick Room because it's so slow, but it doesn't have to be under Trick Room because its speed is kind of meh. So against slower Pokemon, it can reasonably outspeed, or it could even rock a Choice Scarf to outspeed some things surprisingly. And so I really, really like this mon. It's really, really, really good. I'm really happy I was able to take it. Next, I was like, okay, I need a fairy type. And a few fairy types have already gone at this point. I was looking at Sylveon, and then that was gone. I was looking at Florges, and that was taken as well. I was looking for kind of a cleric kind of thing, but then I decided, you know what? No, again, I've got points to burn. I can use them. I might as well just do it. And so I took an Enamorous Therian. Also wasn't taken up until this point. Enamorous Incarnate was taken really early, but my turtle friend here was still available at the time. And so I snatched that up as well. Now, again, it gives me a flying type, which is another weakness to rock, but this thing is insane. It's incredibly bulky. Its typing is quite good, and it gets an incredible move pool. It hits hard with a base 135 special attack, which is absolutely insane. Really good defenses, pretty good HP, but it's super slow, right? Again, in Trick Room, this little thing will work great, but it's also bulky enough to work just fine outside of Trick Room. So none of these are locked into it has to be a Trick Room team. And that was kind of what I was going for with this draft, is I want to go with things that can work in Trick Room. And so there will be weeks that I will bring Trick Room and try to really hamper my opponent's really fast mons. But there will also be weeks where, you know, I will bring a certain mon and it's really slow, but it's not on Trick Room and it's just going to have to sit there and take the hit. I'm trying to pick mons that can get away with that. And this thing, by all means, can. It can set up Iron Defenses, it can set up Calm Minds, and then it can just heal itself up with Draining Kiss. That set is especially nasty, but it also gets really good coverage as well. So it can hit steals with Earth Power. Of course, Moonblast hits really hard. It gets a lot of really good stuff. Plus, it has, of course, its signature move, which lowers the opponent's attack, possibly, which is also great. So there are a lot of really amazing things about this Pokemon. And so I ended up getting one of the best fairies out there, and I'm really happy with it, honestly. So at this point, I get to complete a little core that I was trying to shoot for. And I was kind of surprised that this mon didn't go. I wasn't necessarily shocked necessarily, but I was a little surprised that no one had taken this next mon. And that's Cetitan. Now, Cetitan is a mon that I personally really love. I got 2 shiny Cetoddles in one batch of hatching eggs when the game first came out. And so I've been a huge fan of Cetitan ever since. Shiny Cetitan will be coming to my matches that I choose to bring it off the bench this season. And this thing gives me a lot of really cool stuff. Of course, it's a great sweeper, but it's also really bulky as well with a really, really high HP stat of 170. This thing can tank some hits with thick fat, of course, as well, helping out with that fire type weakness. Now, this thing also, of course, gets Slush Rush. And so in snow, that can be set up by Chilly Reception Slowking. This thing works great. So Trick Room is here for things like Hoopa and Enamorous. And then, of course, Cetitan can work in the snow. And so the Slowking is kind of what unlocks all of these modes to work. And I'm really excited to have all of them on one team. My last pick of the normal draft was actually a sleeper pick that I knew no one was going to take. I knew was on no one's radar. No one would ever even consider taking this Mon. And that's Indeedee. Now, Indeedee, male and female, were both combined in this draft, and so I didn't have to worry about only getting one. They are both pretty similar, but their stats are a little bit different, and their move pools also change a little bit between male and female, and so that's pretty good. They serve different roles. The female is a little bit thicker, and so that can, of course, soak up hits a little bit better, while the male gets access to Trick Room, and that is another Trick Room Mon. It gives me a normal type to give me an immunity to Ghost, which I did not have already. I considered slacking in this slot, actually, but I figured that might be a little stupid and obnoxious. But so yeah, I think Indeedee is really nice here. The other reason I took Indeedee, and the main reason, is for Psychic Surge. Psychic Surge, of course, sets a Psychic Terrain whenever it enters the field. And this can be done for two things. My team is very weak to priority. My team does not have much priority. I have Sucker Punch on Zoroark, I have Sucker Punch on Dragapult, and then I have Ice Shard on my Cetitan, and that's about it. There are plenty of teams that I'm sure that I will be facing this season that are going to have far more uses of that. And so my Mons might be the fastest thing on the field, but if there's a bunch of priority on the other side, it might not matter. And this can shut all of that down. Additionally, there is, of course, the Psychic Seed item that I can put on Sneasler for free Unburden. And of course, working with Psychic Terrain in order to make sure that I am not taking anything priority, plus I'm using Unburden, so I'm stupid fast. Yeah, you're not going to be able to touch Sneasler, and it's going to be pretty fantastic. So I think it's a sleeper pick, but honestly, I think it's going to be pretty cool. I'm definitely not going to bring it every week, but when I do, I think it's going to serve a pretty nice little niche. And so I'm excited to have that flexibility. Finally, once I got my refund from the Zoroark, I had some points laying around, and I realized that I had just never finished my Firewater Grass Core. And so I wanted a grass type, and I had to go with this season's mascot, at least grown up, and that is Chestnut. So of course, you've seen my logo down below me this whole time. We are the Chattanooga Chespins. And so I wanted to go ahead and grab Chestnut. Chestnut got buffed by quite a bit this generation, actually. It got access to Trailblaze, which is a move that actually boosts your speed. This thing is pretty slow. Now, under Trick Room, again, it can work just fine, but it can also run Trailblaze and boost its speed. It also gets access to crazy things like Belly Drum. It gets Drain Punch for recovery. It gets a lot of really interesting things now, and Body Press as well with its really high defense stat. So there's really a lot to love when it comes to this Mon now, and I'm really excited to actually have the mascot on the team for this inaugural season of the Chattanooga Chespins. And of course, we finally come to my choice for a Terra Captain. Now, in this league, of course, like I said at the beginning, it has to be something that was worth 13 points or less. Now, a lot of my Mons, besides Dragapult, were worth about 11 points and down. I tried to keep everything kind of consistent. Hoopa, of course, is too powerful, can't do that. Dragapult is, of course, too powerful, can't do that. But To me, Sneasler makes the most sense here. And so that can actually terrastalize into a lot of different things. I could always terrastalize poison in order to deal a little bit more damage with Dire Claw, or I might even bring Gunk Shot 1 week just to deal a little bit of extra damage. You could also do flying if you're running an acrobatics type set. You could do fighting to boost your fighting type moves, or just some kind of a more defensive typing if that's something that comes up as well. Now, I might change it sometime later during the season if there's a matchup that's just better to have something different as a Terra Captain. But by and large, I think this is going to be what I choose. I do have up to 5 transactions between now and week 6 of the draft. And so I could always swap it to something else and then swap it back. So that is an option that I have going forward. So I think that it's really cool, and I think that it really can help to bolster its strength a lot. So that is my draft, and I am really excited to bring you the Wi-Fi battles for this. Of course, they will go up once a week as I bring these. Battles will be going up on Sundays, so 1 week from today will be the first battle, and so I hope you guys are looking forward to that. Again, make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss that. And of course, in the meantime, you can always check out my How Do I Want to Do This series, where I talk about all D&D playable options. And it's a great place. Of course, join my Discord. We're going to be discussing all kinds of stuff as well. That is, of course, in the description as well. And I hope you guys have a fantastic rest of your weekend. Have a great week this week, and I hope you're looking forward to our week 1 battle. Until next time, stay safe out there, stay healthy. We'll see you later. Bye-bye.